I'm pleased to be joined by Steve Hilton, who many of our viewers may be familiar with already from your time on Fox News. Welcome to Bakersfield.
It's wonderful to be here. I really love coming here. I just love the people here. I love the energy here, both literally in terms of the energy industry, but also in terms of the feeling of, I don't know, there's something very authentic about the California spirit that you find here in this part of the valley, and I really, really enjoy my visits very much.
That's a big emphasis for the people here who often feel sometimes overlooked between Los Angeles and Sacramento. So today you actually went out there, you went to the oil facility here in Bakersfield. Can you tell us about that experience today?
So again, not my first visit to an oil field, but I wanted to show everyone, to tell the story of what's happening, because we have this incredible energy industry right here in Kern County, and the facts of what's going on are so shocking and make no sense, and it's all political ideology that is just crushing people's jobs, it's crushing communities, undermining the fabric of those communities, hurting working families, but also, most insanely, it's actually increasing carbon emissions. So when you think about this assault on our energy industry and what it is justified by, why they say they're doing it, the Democrats who've been in power, the one-party rule now for nearly 15 years or more, it's all in the name of climate. It's all climate change, we want to fight climate change, the war on fossil fuels, no more fossil fuels. Well, what's happening? We use 1.8 million barrels of oil a day in California. We used to produce most of it here. Now, we produce barely 15% of it, but roughly 250,000 barrels of oil. Where's the rest coming from? It's not that we're not using it, we're importing it on giant super tankers. Halfway around the world they're traveling from places like Iraq, spewing out carbon emissions. So what I was here to tell everyone today is that that's going to stop when I'm the governor. We're going to support this industry. We're going to issue permits to maintain the wells that we have, to expand them, to drill new wells, because as long as we're using oil and gas in California, let's use the oil and gas we have here instead of importing it. And by the way, if we do that, we don't just help protect jobs here in Kern County and communities here in Kern County, but we also reduce carbon emissions.
Yes, and the other thing too, I know that on the other side of it, since you already jumped into permits, we got your views on that already, is the consumer aspect, which is the gas tax. What would you do? Would you be able, from executive action, to take care of the gas tax, or would you be able to slowly break it down over time?
Well, I think the best way we can help families across the board and businesses is to reduce energy costs. So of course, if we produce more energy here in California, it's going to bring the price down as well as all the other benefits. And that applies right across the board in terms of electricity. We should be using gas, Californian gas, to generate electricity. That will be much cheaper than what we're doing now, which is increasingly relying on wind and solar, which is unreliable. We're becoming more reliant on unreliable energy. The gas that we have here in California could be powering our power stations to generate electricity. That would bring the cost down. In terms of cost for everyday people in California, I think that the top line, the number one item on my tax plan is for everyone in California, your first $100,000 of income would be free of state income tax. That would be an immediate help to millions of households in California, the people who've been hurt the most by Democrat policies, and including on the gas tax.
You're hitting all the talking points I was ready to ask you about. So can you talk to us about why that's so important? Because there's so many people who are finding it very difficult to afford living in California.
It's unbelievable how bad it's gotten. Just last week, there was a new survey published. It's published every 2 years. And I was waiting for the data to see if things had gotten better. They haven't gotten better, they've gotten worse. Here are the numbers. 35% of Californians today cannot afford to meet their basic needs for rent, food, medical care, can't afford to meet their needs. That's how bad it's got, because of course everything's so expensive. We have the highest housing costs in the country, the highest prices for electricity, gas, water, everything. And so that is driven by Democrat policies. It's not an accident. It's not natural in the way that this has occurred. It's not some natural disaster. This is the direct result of the policies put there by the people who've been running California. But the good news is we can change that. If we change direction, we can change the policies. It doesn't have to be like this. Life doesn't have to be such a struggle in California.
I want to go back to an issue that you were talking about regarding energy, and particularly about electricity. At the event that we were just both at, your event at Hodel's, you had heard the question about the solar fields being built along some of the agricultural lands. There's not many people that tie the ag lands into potentially even water infrastructure as well, and the energy power of having solar fields in ag fields. What can you tell us about what you would like to see as far as, I guess, maybe state permitting when it comes to certain projects like water infrastructure?
Well, it's really, to me, these things are all connected, and that's why I've been working on California's policy challenges for many years now. I started an organization called Golden Together. We've published policy reports on energy and water and the business climate, and all these things tie together. And of course, back in the day, before we moved here to California in 2012, I was senior advisor to the Prime Minister in the UK, and I was very much involved in our domestic policy reform program. So I've operated at that level, implementing change in government. It's very difficult to do, but it's not impossible. And so when you look at these connected issues, I mean, it's almost one of the most heartbreaking things I see when I travel up and down this great Central Valley of ours, that you see the most fertile agricultural land in the world being taken out of commission because the regulations and the bureaucrats are taking away water allocations that farmers have paid for, so they can't grow their crops, and instead, so they can't make their businesses work, so they're selling to solar farms, industrialized solar farms that get subsidies from the government to install these solar farms. So you're replacing real farms with solar farms, and then on top of that, the neighboring farms are affected because the solar farms heat up the local climate. So in the name of climate change, we're changing the climate locally. That makes it harder for farmers around the solar farms to grow because you don't get the chill hours which are needed for crops like tree nuts to grow properly. The whole thing is an absolute disgrace. It's an attack on our great agriculture industry, and when I'm governor, it's going to end.
I imagine government regulation, government spending are the two biggest focuses when you get into that office. And I think perhaps one of the biggest examples that when people here in Bakersfield they hear about all the money that's spent on it, but they don't see an improvement is homelessness in the state. And we always hear about Governor Newsom saying, you're going to get this amount of money to each city and county, then we'll judge how you perform. But you would maybe have a different approach than that, and just giving away the money.
Well, and the money, I mean, it's a huge amount of money. I mean, the number keeps going up, 24 billion, 38 billion. This is our money, our taxpayer money, going into a system that's supposed to help with homelessness. It's actually making it worse. The numbers go up. And that's because they're not changing the policy, the fundamental reasons that we have this homelessness crisis. Number one, you've got to enforce the law. It is illegal to camp on the streets. It has been for years, but we haven't enforced the law. That's step number one. Secondly, you've got to get people the help that they need, because 80+% of people who are homeless are suffering from mental health problems or drug and alcohol addiction or some combination. But unbelievably in California, the Democrats passed a law in 2016 called Housing First. And Housing First says that any organization receiving that taxpayer money to help with homelessness is not allowed to require that the homeless people getting the services receive treatment for mental health or are on a pathway of drugs or alcohol. They just get given an apartment and that's it, left to their own devices. It is unbelievable, but that's the law. In a way, you could say they've made it illegal to actually solve the problem. So we have to overturn the Democrats' Housing First policy. And then the third thing we have to do is actually expand mental health treatment, because there's all this money going into it. And Gavin Newsom had his ballot initiative last year that was supposed to help with mental health, but actually it's reduced the amount of money that counties have to spend on mental health services. So the whole thing is a disgrace. The money is actually going into the pockets of corrupt non-profits and developers who are getting all this taxpayer money without actually helping the homeless. It's a great example, a terrible example of everything that's wrong with the way California is run.
Well, we've looked at his attacks on Prop 36, but Prop 36 was actually creating more treatment court options and pathways to see treatment for increasing punishments as it goes to drug addiction and homelessness as well. I think that's an important point to make, because you will likely have to work with a Democrat Assembly and Democrat Senate, even if it's an improvement, which I'm sure you'd hope for as well, and probably would be required for you to win the governorship. How do you go about working with people across the side of the aisle?
Well, the first thing I'd say is I'm very Democrat Party. I helped negotiate the coalition agreement between the two parties. In 10 Downing Street, right next to the cabinet room, was my office, and I shared my office with my opposite number from a different party. And we worked together every single day. We had desks facing each other, and we just figured out a way to make it work. We didn't agree on everything, but we tried to act together in the national interest to do things that were effective, positive, practical. That would be my attitude here. And frankly, when I'm elected governor, that will be a political revolution in California. And so I would expect the legislature, however it is comprised, to work with me to enact the agenda, the policies that I ran on and that people would have voted for. I'd expect their cooperation in that and to work constructively to bring about the changes people voted for. But honestly, if I don't get that cooperation, one way or another, I will get it done. I will deliver what people voted for, because people want change in California. We can't go on like this. California is obviously not working. It doesn't have to be such a struggle. We've got to change direction, and when I'm elected, I will make sure we change direction. You've got a lot of power in the governor's office, even without the legislature. You run the executive branch, the bureaucracy, all these agencies. You can veto legislation that's harmful, that's coming out of the legislature. You can appoint judges. As we saw in the pandemic, you can use emergency powers. In my view, Governor Newsom used those emergency powers in an incredibly cruel and destructive way to shut down schools and businesses and churches in the pandemic. We can use them in a positive way. So while I hope to have cooperation from the legislature, we'll get it done one way or the other.
And I wanted to ask you a little bit about one of the reasons why you're running. I heard this on another podcast, I believe, and it was about your flight back home to San Francisco. Can you talk to us about that a little bit?
Well, we moved here in 2012, and really that was for family reasons. Our second son was born, and my wife was traveling a lot to California for her job at the time. And it just made sense for our family to be together. And when we moved here, we didn't really have a long-term plan. We just thought it would be good for the family. And that was 2012. And about 4 years into it, I went on a trip back to the UK and landed at San Francisco Airport. And I do remember just looking out of the window thinking, oh, it's so great to be home. And that's when I realized, oh, okay, this is home. And actually, I really feel like that about California. It's not just literally my home, where we've raised our family and I've started a business here and taught at Stanford University and had a new career in the media and done all these things. So it's literally our home, but in a way, it's deeper than that. I feel so proud to be an American, as I got my citizenship in 2021, but a proud Californian too. I feel California represents something that really means a lot to me. That idea, the very best of America, the spirit of innovation and energy and optimism and ambition and the rebel spirit, all these great things that California represents that are very, very much part of how I see the world. And that's why I just feel this is the moment where we have to rekindle that spark and restore California to the glory that it should be. And that's why the theme of my campaign is to make California golden again.
And I wanted to give you an opportunity too. There's so many people out there criticism. Well, a Republican can't win in California. You laid out a pretty good argument at Hodel's when you were talking to the town hall. If you want to do an abridged version of that, you're more than welcome to. And I would, I guess, add to the point, the last governor was also born in Europe as well, who's a Republican.
Exactly. Well, actually, it's even closer than that, because Governor Schwarzenegger, of course, was Austrian. And in fact, although I grew up in England, my parents are Hungarian. And so long ago, there was the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and so in a funny way, if this ability to make the change happen that I hope will happen when I'm elected governor, if that does come to pass, then you'll have had an Austrian and a Hungarian. So there you are. I think the point is, everyone can see we need change in California, and I do sense that the tide is turning. You're seeing many counties in the November elections last year flip from Democrat to Republican. Excuse me. You see cities like Huntington Beach in Orange County, the biggest city in Orange County, real turnaround there. The council was 6-1 Democrat not that long ago, 4 years ago. Now it's 7-0 Republican. You're seeing signs of change everywhere. The ballot initiatives on the ballot last November. You're seeing across the country a real political revolution going on with the way the Latino vote is going, really switching from Democrat to Republican. Of course, that's a huge part of our community here in California. The working class shift, the working class vote used to be very solidly Democrat, now it's not. So those are the ingredients. But I think the main point I'd make is in 2026, because it's so clear people want change in California, the candidate that's going to win is the change candidate. And I'm very, very determined that that will be me.
And the last question I want to ask you is, your media campaign's been very interesting to me and very, it seems atypical for a lot of candidates these days who are so used to maybe watching someone in national media. Maybe they catch the clips on X, but you're going and you're talking to people on X. You went back to Stanford, you talked to people that are on that campus where I believe you used to teach over there. What is it about reaching people on social media platforms, whether it's X, that maybe reaches more of a working class or middle class audience than perhaps the way of the past, which would have been just going through us? Although we do like you coming here today.
Pleasure to be with you here today. And I just think that's the point. We need to be everywhere, both in terms of this. It's a very big state, and there's a lot of different people, different communities with different issues. And I've already spent the last 2-3 years traveling the state, learning about those issues. But each time you visit somewhere, you learn something new, as I did here today in Bakersfield. And so to me, it's partly about me making sure that I really understand what people need. That's why I'm traveling around so much, going to every part of the state. This morning we're in Ventura County, here we are in Bakersfield, tomorrow Los Angeles, on Friday back in the Central Valley, we're in Visalia or in Fresno and so on. So partly that's about making sure that I really understand what the needs are, but it's also about making sure that this big state of ours, this glorious, magnificent state in all its diversity, people get the chance to see what I'm learning and tell the stories about what we need to change. And social media provides you a really great platform to do that. So I hope people follow me at Steve Hilton X and get involved in the campaign at stevehiltonforgovernor.com.
Well, Steve Hilton, thank you so much for coming in today.
Appreciate being with you. Thank you.